So welcome to this panel. Just quick introduction out of the way because we'll do formal ones in a bit. I'm Side Pocket. I'm one of the two co-founders of DCG 201. So funny story literally that happened minutes before we got here. We're still doing the panel. You guys could still stay here. We had a major kind of issue with that. I made these beautiful slides over the course of a couple of days, and basically, I'm too long to get into this. The slides didn't show up on here. I have all the videos and pictures and stuff that we could show, but I don't have the slides yet, so my cohort, who should be here in roughly like 20 minutes or so, will come back and have those slides, and we can get to some of the more minor topics, but I know the panel off the back of my head, and we're gonna discuss some things. So basically, I screwed up. I apologize if there's no like super fancy art, amazing PowerPoints, but I also noticed that all the amazing talks today were just people sitting here talking, but we are gonna be looking at some really funny stuff. We kind of designed this panel as a comedy show that you can learn from, so this should be interesting. So. Like I said, I am Side Pocket. I am one of the two co-founders of DCG 201, formerly known as DEF CON 201. We're one of the many DEF CON groups across the United States and around the world. The 201 stands for the area code, so we're located in that armpit that's called New Jersey, specifically Jersey City. We normally meet third Friday of the month. Of course, I say that as if there's not a giant plague going around. So ever since March of 2020, we've actually been having good success online streaming a bunch of our stuff. So even when we go back to in-person stuff, there's always going to be an element of that that's live streamed. So even if you can't make it, you can watch cool things. We tinker, we hack with things, we catch up on the news, we cover a lot. Basically all the stuff that you would see at DEF CON, think of a tiny version of that with a lot of like hoagies and angry Italians, and that's basically kind of our meeting panel. So if you ever come by Jersey City, you can find our website at, well, there's multiple URLs, but dcg201.org. dc201.org and our old name, defcon201.org would work. If you're wondering about the name change, it's more of a formality thing with the rest of the groups because we have too many people who think that we're actually like core DEF CON staff, and it's like, no, that's not us. We're not that competent, as you can see here. So basically, this was going to be one of those slides. Let me just move this over here. So yeah, about that 2021, hindsight was, 2020. 2021 as well, but especially 2020. That is the dumpster fire from hell. We, as you can see, us wearing masks are still continuing in that hell. And it's been hell for everyone. And as someone who's been, besides breaking and modifying computers, as someone who's also you know, been super into gaming since I was in diapers. This was not a good year for the industry. There's some good things that happened, especially when it comes to like open source and homebrew stuff, like people doing local things, like that's been amazing. But in terms of like big companies, like, you know, I guess like EA, it's like yes for us, but no for them sort of thing. Basically, all of the industry's like really bad practices and stuff just kind of hit the fan. I want to ask here, so what's been like your highlight for like bad thing in gaming, whether it was a glitchy bad game or the online servers didn't work? You can just shout out things if you want.
Battlefield 2042.
Oh geez, yeah. Anything that involves floating bro arm shooting just failed for the past 2 years. Yep.
Timefall 1 and 2 DDoS 6.
Yes, we're actually, one of the slides that we're eventually going to get to is the fact that not only did they shut down the Titanfall, but the thing is that they like blamed, in vague terms, computer hackers, when in reality they were just like, we're too lazy and we don't want to put money for the security, so we'd rather kill off this game that everyone loved instead of actually doing the maintain and care for it because we're an EA subsidiary now.
Someone in the software industry, does the fun with Minecraft and Log4j count?
We actually have a video about that demonstrates that. We will get into Log4j in a moment, because Log4j is literally the gift that keeps on giving. Although, just like in real life gaming, Microsoft did see that and go, challenge accepted, and decided to do for New Year's Y2K, which was also really fun. So, you know, it's like when they saw Doom and we're like, we want that on Windows. It's like, Java can't have all this fun. We need to have our own problems too, because, you know, we're Microsoft. Anyone else before I continue on? Yes?
And welcome Q signs.
So repeat that?
Final Fantasy 14 Q signs.
Oh, geez. The whole, that and also just the whole like, hey, we're going to remake our games for the... Square Enix has this weird fetish of not only NFTs, which we'll unfortunately get to in a moment, but they have a weird... Yeah, it's grown. That's the appropriate... insert grown here. But Square Enix also has a really bad history of just, we want to remake all of your favorite games except for 7, but we want them to look more progressively terrible. Like how far can we make the art and stuff go bad before people will stop buying it at obnoxious prices? Yes, you sir?
Cyberpunk 2077 launch.
Yes, that's the whole thing. We will look at clips for that, and I'll kind of get into moments because as someone who also used to make games, I can also look at a lot of footage and kind of break down my theory of where the problems actually probably were. And we'll take 2 last ones, you sir?
Considering I just put my Switch down, and since you brought up selling the same thing, Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl.
Yes. I unfortunately I couldn't get a clip of that. I do know about the insane infinite surf technique. Yeah, one of them. There's a lot of glitchy games this year. I'm still hyped for Arceus, but it should be interesting to see what that's like on day one. And one last one before I continue on. Yes, you over there in the crazy hippy dippy shirt.
The Grand Theft Auto re-release.
Yes, we will have a good breakdown montage of that. So don't worry about that. So we're in. So that's one part, and this was going to be a slide on its own, and you can kind of see the preview here, but it's like, one thing that I want to get out of the way, and I just want to let everyone know, I will still put a warning when we look at, and I'm surprised no one brought this up, Sonic Colors Ultimate. Also, what's also with this thing of super best duper version being the worst version out there? That's the whole thing. But, so I will put a warning out there, but I edited all of these clips, so even though I'm going to put the warning out there for that, none of these should have anything, as far as I can see, that might put me and others into brain disco mode. So that's what I'm counting on. I'm still going to particularly do the warning for the colors one, because that was actually so annoying to edit, because I literally had to take seconds of clips to edit together because you have to edit around how glitchy it is, and I'll kind of get into and explain probably why that happened. So there shouldn't be any triggering of that, but there was this weird thing where people, we're talking about Sonic Colors Ultimate's seizure-inducing glitches, but you also had not only Balan Wonderworld thinking that flashing bosses were a good idea before they day one patched that out. I wish they could day one patch a bunch of other things out in that game, including the entire game design. But a lot of people forget, because Cyberpunk 2077 had so much bad things in it that you sort of forget all the stuff that happened, because it happened all that way. It's like, oh, that's a bad analogy. I'm not going to use that one. But yeah, so a lot of people forget that one of the things they did have to edit out was not only did they have a scene in the game that dead on, because it uses the same exact test patterns to trigger epilepsy, but that it was actually designed in. The Polish team somehow put this, sent it to field testing, everyone died, and they went, this is a good idea, we're gonna ship with this. They just thought this was a good game idea of let's give everyone seizures at home. So if there's one thing I do wanna take away from going forward this year, can we please all demand game developers to stop giving gamers seizures? Especially if you've seen the gaming disability panel, that really needs to be a rallying point, because we have 3 major games already that did that by accident or on purpose. Let's just stop doing that. So I'm going to get that out of the way. So I guess the actual thing that I want to bring up, that I'm also shocked that people won't bring up, and we're going to look at this first. And actually, let me just quickly preload this, because we should be on mute here, but I can talk about this here. Open with is, let's see, where did it go? Down here. Is the big giant Yoshi in the room, which is the Nintendo GigaLeak. Because it's been 2 years, so we kind of forget that this happened. This is a great, by the way, thing that they found, where there's an actual animation of Mario not crying and annoying you, crawling on the floor when you get knocked off. So that was something that was discovered. I will say right here, my cohort will also bring this up too. We do, when we go to Q&A later, please don't ask us how this works. We don't, literally, we couldn't even tell you if we wanted to, both for legal reasons, and we honestly don't know. We have ideas possibly of how this whole GigaLeak happened. My more bet is probably a bunch of disgruntled employees, which is often a common thing when leaks happen. Is a lot of people think that, it's sometimes stuff does happen through server and backdoors in game development studios, but most of the time it's just because someone didn't pay Bill that designs textures on level 8 high enough, so he's like, F you, I'm moving to another company anyhow, leak everything. So that's personally my theory, but honestly, that's a theory. A game thing. No, I hate that guy. I don't know how the GigaLeak happened, but man, did we get a ton of interesting information from this, including entire source compiles of Super Mario 64 and Ocarina of Time, which has impacted multiple things, as well as very interesting game development stuff, such as I'm a huge Star Fox fan, and I didn't even know that there were originally human characters to be designed for Star Fox 2. So like the character portraits, they actually have human versions. So I guess the idea maybe is that since they were making a game for furries, that they would upend the tea table by making the furries into humans. I have no idea. I'll take your quick thing.
McCloud from F-Zero comes from?
I'm sorry?
Is that where James McCloud from F-Zero comes from?
Could be. Nintendo's notorious. One of the reasons why they keep a huge vault like the way Disney does, except they actually let their properties come out and play occasionally, is that because they pretty much almost reuse all of their ideas. Now, I'll tell you personally, the thing I wish was in here, and maybe it's in here later on, I don't know, is the fact that they made a Super FX version of Zelda 2. A lot of people forget that's something they've mentioned in interviews, and when this happened, I was like, I have no idea who did this leak, but please, 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 I want to see that, please, please. Because I imagine the original Nintendo 64 demo for Zelda on the then Ultra 64 hardware, but running at like 5 frames a second. Like, I just wanted to see that. But we got a lot of good stuff, and one of the big ones, and the one that one of our panelists who couldn't get here, and we'll get into a moment, was talking about, is the whole L is real. That's been a conspiracy theory for like many, many years due to an odd texture. And not only did they find a almost complete, there's the original like, oh, L is real, what is this? Are the sheep talking to me? What's going on? But not only did they find a partial model that they were able to complete and then fully skeletonize. And the thing is, when I say partial model, this is how it shows up in the data file. So they had to like correct some stuff and stitch things together. But for any of you who ever read like EGM2 or whatever, and they used to kind of advertise there was going to be a Super Mario 64 2, the longest running thing, which was confirmed in interviews, is that there was supposed to be the sequel to Super Mario 64 on Nintendo 64, which apparently was something they originally tested, was having a Mario and Luigi co-op mode where it's like either split screen with 2 players. They tried it where it was the same thing at the same characters at the same time. That's like a preview screenshot, what they thought it is. That's a derpy Yoshi. There's a theme with this GigaLeak of weird looking Yoshis, by the way. There's weird maneuverable Yoshi, there's bloody Yoshi, which is amazing. Off tangent thing, another odd thing about this GigaLeak was seeing inappropriate memes that the Nintendo developers left in the source because they're thinking, oh, we're a private company, the source will never come out of our vault. And then this leak happened, so you got to see like a lot of like non-Nintendo, non-PC looking stuff of like weird half-naked men pixel art fingering things and stuff like that, it's like guys and gals in an office joking around. And now I'm pretty sure there was a lot of like, katanas going around and cutting off fingers and stuff because all of this stuff kind of came out. And that's a patched together thing from the compiled source of like what a 2-player Super Mario 64 would have looked like if they actually completed it with that model that they reverse engineered in the GigaLeak. And it also, one of the things you're going to kind of notice in this whole presentation is just how amazing, and Sega knows this, is when you give fans things that, as we all know, that's why we're here at MAGFest. Fans are crazy. I'm a crazy person. I like to think you guys are way more normal than I am, but and that when we're given these opportunities for things, like we will just go for that. I mean, fans have been making with the Sonic hacking community. They've been making fan games for many years, and then Sega was like, all right, we'll actually do something with this, and then they made, to me, one of the best Sonic games ever, Sonic Mania. So that's kind of a good example of when you give passionate fans stuff, even like weird table scraps like this, like all the insane stuff that you can do with this. I will bring up that if my cohort is able to make it here in time, another thing that came from this GigaLeak, and again, I didn't know this was going to happen, so I don't have the video of this, is for a long time, hackers and passionate gamers have been decompiling and trying to reverse engineer the engine for Ocarina of Time, which is basically a more complicated, advanced version of the Super Mario 64 engine that they use. I don't know if they found if there's an actual name for that yet. Maybe we'll find out later on, or I'm an idiot, I don't know. But one of the breakthroughs, and if you follow one of my favorite YouTubers, Modern Vintage Gamer, you've probably seen him do a video on this, which is the fact that thanks to this GigaLeak and the data, there's actually now an open source near perfect derivative of Ocarina of Time. Basically what they did was they looked over all the machine code that was in that GigaLeak, the decompile group, and they basically recreated it line by line, and I think it's C code. And because it's basically, okay, take it, now make it look nice, it's Nintendo, they're not using the direct engine. It's not any of the same code. It's all new code done in a different language, but it runs exactly the same on the same parameters. If you ran the code, which we were going to try to do here, it looks like you're just running Ocarina of Time in an emulator. And that's absolutely like fantastic, especially when you come to things like game archiving, which there was a panel of earlier about that. Just the that would be like a godsend, that if we can reverse engineer things like the Ocarina of Time and preserve copyright material that way, it'll be really fascinating to see what projects can be archived and also salvaged using these sort of reverse engineering methods of essentially like, I'm kind of touching you, but I'm not really touching you. So we just wanted to get the big GigaLeak out of the way, and so far we don't see like Nintendo lawyers sharpening sticks yet, although they might have like a sniper outside with a blue shell to hit us on the way out. So we don't, like, you laugh, I've actually seen the legal division do things like that, where you literally walk 2 feet and like 5 people in brown suits from their lawyer team comes out. It's pretty nuts. Yeah, like the odd thing that I can tell, because I've worked with stuff with Nintendo, they hate being called the Nintendo Ninjas. I'm not gonna say the name, there's actually a really formal name and it's split into 2 parts. There's a social marketing team that watches all the gamer stuff. Like, they're on Reset Era, they're on NeoGAF, they hang out in Discords and stuff, and they don't comment, or they pretend to just be normal gamers and they just watch. And as soon as they get something, they archived all the thing, flag it, and they send it over to their dream legal team of like really scary people that like Disney envies. So just to let you know that while they're not Katana running around people, that division kind of exists. They're just not called that. They're just using the name that I can't say. So someone saw it before. Here's a great joke. Cyberpunk 2077. This game. What I find fascinating, I actually have a top comment on a YouTube video about this, is what I love is that we went through that whole launch with Anthem under BioWare, and everyone's just like, oh my god, how could this amazing company, this wasn't like the B team with Andromeda, this is the amazing core team that like made Baldur's Gate and all that, how did they screw up this? And then it's like, here's Cyberpunk, oh, I forgot about all that, I want to do the same mistakes again with hype. They unfortunately kind of did the best argument of why you should not pre-order particularly third-party games anytime soon, to sort of try before you buy thing, because man, as someone who's made games, we are going to laugh and dunk on a bunch of things for Cyberpunk 2077, but it's just also like, I feel so bad for the actual dev team, especially since inevitably when stuff like this happens, usually the dev teams are both proud of what they're able to achieve, but they're so mad at upper staff. You then get the here comes Jason Schreiber stories of just the horror stories behind the scenes. So when I saw what they were trying to do, I was like, I'm just going to wait till the game comes out. We actually did manage to get it in a way that I'm not able to, and we actually tried to live stream it on a machine that came out the same year that it was announced, which was 2012. And I think it ran, I think Ocarina of Time on Nintendo 64 had a better frame rate, and we wasted most of that charity stream, because we usually stream video games for charity. I actually have one coming up on the later this month. But we couldn't even get that to work properly for most of the stream, and we had like a bunch of hacker superstars on there, and I'm like, I'm so sorry for looking at your watch. It's like, we're having a good conversation, we're just laughing on like, we all thought this would be crap, and yeah, it's crap. There's just so much that definitely could go wrong here. Let me just load up and I'll talk over this footage here. Of just some of the many examples. And a lot of people, I always love to talk about like, how do you get this sort of bad rendering? How do you get like this such bad AI and texture work on these like huge multi-layer project? Yeah, anytime someone says, oh, this looks like PlayStation graphics, like, no, you haven't seen, yeah. And you know, that's totally fine. Yeah. That's just going to work in Jersey City.
There's no defense weapons.
Yes.
My cousin got killed like that.
Yep. How many cops can we just, yep, they're high. We're all here, it's a party. I love this AI. So I'm just going to pause real quick. We are going to watch the rest of this clip, but a lot of people always ask, like, how does this get this way? And, you know, there is a part of it of just too many cooks in the kitchen that are all lead project heads, and they have no concept of what realistic deadlines are. They don't know how to trim things. That's definitely an element. Another thing is, you know, a lot of people forget when you go to the arcade area and you see like the OG Mortal Kombat arcade machine, or like House of the Dead 2, if that's even running, and stuff like that. Those were the Cyberpunk 2077s of their, in terms of budget and size, like a 3-person team making like a fighting game that actually runs, and it like that was like, oh my God, we spent like $300. Like this is, we just tanked all of our, I have a third mortgage, and that's the type of things there. So we kind of forget the scale of these sort of things. And now with video games, you have like a minimum, usually most teams are like 80 to 130 people for small projects. And when you look at something like Cyberpunk 2077, hundreds, if not even over 1,000 people work on this game. And you're trying to cover, especially open world games are so huge, how do you do that? Well, if you ever saw and unfortunately I don't have it here because this was before this time, but I'll bring up Mass Effect Andromeda. What ends up happening is, and I'll tell you a good example with this work is Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, I can't wait for the sequel, is you do things procedurally and modularly. The ideal way you do this is you break each area into chunks, and like you throw a script AI into here, or you throw this texture all the way over here, or this group of geometry. And then what you're supposed to do is then, after everything's generated, you then go in as individuals and you tweak it. For example, a lot of animation studios like Pixar do this. They'll have things that like generate flowing human hair, but then they'll have people go in and adjust the simulation for it, essentially hand animate part of it so that it moves exactly the way they want to. Because if they just did the flat render, you've seen the ones where it screws up and the hair's trying to eat the ceiling and everything. And what ends up happening here is essentially they did all this generation, none of time, money, or both in order to polish it. And so what you're seeing here is essentially what this probably looked like to the developers when they were developing it in dev mode. This was not probably supposed to be seen, but we've already delayed Cyberpunk 8,000 times. We announced it back in '83. It needs to ship now, and it needs to ship. And just like we've not learned anything from ET, it needs to ship before Christmas, which I'm also kind of glad is to some degree sort of changing here. That's my favorite thing, that someone edited. And then, bendy trees. And you can warp around and stuff, and just the non-responsive AI, which could be another thing also is that when you bring up bugs to developers, their QA team knows about this, their quality testing. They're ignoring it, or no one's paying attention to it. So yeah, that was all that disaster. As well as this disaster, that was me on the bus getting to MAGFest from New Jersey. Before we could go on, is there any sort of your personal experiences with running it? Who unfortunately got the PlayStation 4 or Xbox One versions? My condolences. They should have bought you houses. Any sort of comments on Cyberpunk before we move on? Yes, Hugh?
So on one hand, it was kind of convenient because it was crashing every 20 minutes. So it was basically the game saying, hey, you've played enough for the day.
You, sir?
I bought it on release day. I installed it. I started playing it. 20 minutes later, it crashed. And it also took down my GPU driver to the point where I had to reboot my computer entirely to get any video output.
I'm actually shocked that malware scanners don't identify it as ransomware or something at this point. Yes?
So on the note of leaving things unfinished or QA mode, I think a bunch of people tested on the initial release before any patches and concluded there was no actual driving AI. It actually just followed.
Yes. And they were like, we're going to put this later, and they never put it in later. It's like that voiceover of he thought it was his wife. It was not his wife. That's what essentially happened in the game. I'll take one more before we go on. I guess you again, sir?
Me?
Yeah, didn't you raise your hand?
So, not myself per se, but a very close friend of mine. Since you mentioned that it wasn't flagged by malware, it actually has been. With my friend's computer, he was playing, he got about 2 hours in, and then the game crashed because one of his 3 anti-malware programs popped up saying, hey, this might have problems with the network. So we screwed his computer.
It's either going to be probably like a network thing, especially if the game has DRM, or another aspect of it is I know a lot of malware stuff. Also, they clock the GPU speed and heat if you have those graphic cards, because if it's running at a high temperature, like you're basically running Crysis in Crysis, and your computer thinks, oh, it must be a crypto miner, and will like knock it down. So that's a fun thing. But yeah, I guess it has been. Thank you for sharing that story. So you think, oh, this was 2020. Well, and by the way, just my quick comment about Cyberpunk 2077. What was fun for me is that I grew up with that genre of reading the Sprawl series from William Gibson and stuff like that. I'm a huge Matrix fan. Do not bring up the fourth movie. It was not as bad as I thought it was, but anyhow, and what was annoying me is that Cyberpunk is sort of like a brain concept. It's kind of like the way fantasy is. And I hate that Cyberpunk now, especially with this game, was just like, oh, it's everything in the 80s. And I'm like, oh, we're going to be haunted by this for years. To the point where there was like indie games that were also doing this style. And then this game came out and we never heard about those indie games because everyone's just like, no one wants to even look at that like what I call corporate punk style that Cyberpunk was pushing. So in a weird way, I was just like, yeah, it's like hackers won by didn't do anything. So the thing about this is that, we could talk about this literally, we could actually do that as an entire panel, but that's Cyberpunk, that was 2020. We developed a vaccine and boosters. I'm sure 2021 we've learned, nope, as the Yahtzee song goes, this is the industry that doesn't learn anything, tee-hee-hee-hee-hee. And probably we have 2 runners up for probably this year's Cyberpunk. Now there's many who definitely deserve the runner-up category. I'm going to be mentioning pieces of those here. But as someone mentioned, probably the big one that probably just eclipses Sonic Colors Ultimate by a little bit is definitely the GTA Definitive Edition. Now, me and Ciricel, who will hopefully be here soon, have a theory, and I'm not doing that joke again, where we agree with if you've ever seen What Happened with Matt McMuscles, we pretty much, I'm glad he mentioned all that stuff because that's what we thought, which is when you looked at the release scheduling, and I've always explained to people, anytime you get confused about what the game industry does, we all see them as video games. There's an industry with it. And so often when something goes awry, it's the industry side of it that screws it over. It's just like any other workplace. And we agree with him that we have no proof of this, but when you look at the time scheduling, that Grand Theft Auto 5 upgrade for the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Ones that you can't get a hold of, and I think they're worth more than like Bitcoin at this point. They're basically their own NFTs. What was I getting to here? I think of NFT and my brain dies, so I apologize. But as you do, and we will get into a bit of that in a moment, but that upgraded version for next-gen PCs, PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X, Series Xbox, that was supposed to come out this last holiday. It was supposed to come out in November. And due to probably development issues that we might be talking about on a very similar panel next year, cross your fingers that doesn't happen, that was moved to the end of Rockstar's fiscal year at the end of March. So it should be coming out, if they don't delay it for an 8 millionth time, March of this year. And this is a problem because, as you know, Sony has particularly heavily featured this. So not only do you have Rockstar and Take-Two and their investors panicking, but you have a console manufacturer who's trying to sell consoles with your third-party game going down this. So, of course, they panicked. They need a game to make up for those Christmas sales they would have gotten for GTA. And that's how we got the definitive edition. To me, it's definitively of how bad the game industry can break. We're going to go individually to what's wrong with the engine. It's going to be about like 8 minutes long, but just to sort of know from this, but oh man. See, I'm already getting a headache thinking about how this game was. Just the drive to, and I'll put it this way, we're going to bring this up at the end of the panel. This is probably the big reason why, honestly, we need to unionize game development. That's the thing that's what we need to do. That would solve most of these problems. Like, that used to be my running joke of like, what do sex workers and game developers have in common? There's no unions for them. They have no representation. It's why you can see, it's why Acclaim could make a contest of like, name your dead relative after Turok and you get a free game. There's no opinion, no one's allowed to say no. And so a little bit of background, because Matt Muscles does bring this up about this. The people who ported this over, like, they could have asked Sony, especially if it was exclusive, of like, can you give us Blue Sky? They did Dark Souls, have them do it, just one GTA game. But, and I'm pretty sure, because it seems like the Grand Theft Auto San Andreas is the least glitchy one, although the glitches it has are just phenomenal. And we are going to see some of them. We're going to see some of them. But, there he is. Hey. Yep. So I'm going to enter my super secret password, and hopefully he'll be able to extract from this. Quickly introduce yourself, Cyril.
I'm Cyril. I do Nintendo hacking stuff. I'm on Switch Root. I'm on a few other things. I put Android on the Switch with an amazing team. Congratulate them. I just assembled the people.
Yep. He's basically, if my brain was not in my skull, I would have lost it a long time ago. Awesome. Yep. So I'm going to try to grab the slides in a moment, probably while we watch a bit of video. But yeah, and he'll be back. He also is one of the main big, he's been doing MAGFest forever, has been wanting to drag me out. So when he gets back, give him a huge round of applause for that. But what I will get into about GTA is just that, because I don't want to keep going, the team that made this is the people, I don't know if you remember the mobile ports for iOS and Android back around like 2011. This is the same team, and they had even less time and resources. So this is not even they're not taking PS2 code and bringing it up to Xbox Series X. They're taking the mobile versions of that code and updating it, which we're gonna see a repeat of this with Sonic Colors, where a big problem we've been having is, it's on one hand, like, yeah, I think if the developers had more time and effort, it shouldn't be this hard to take a Wii game and just port it over with new textures. On the other hand, the reason why we can't just throw, even though Doom runs on everything, just Doom on some random piece of hardware, is that a lot of game design in terms of the actual rendering and stuff, completely different than what it is now. You know, for example, like Crysis has a hard time running on modern PCs, not because it's a monster, it can easily run the code, but because of how GPU focused it is with all of its processing and the way they coded it. Modern architecture doesn't get that well, and a lot of the issues you can see from both GTA, Definitive Edition, and Sonic Colors definitely stem from that. I'm going to take you, and then we'll watch some footage.
This is a fun thought of nobody learns from any past mistakes. This reminds me a lot also of the Warcraft 3 remaster, where they also
Yes.
took down the original version.
Oh, yeah.
Also, guess what versions of Final Fantasy games are on Steam?
Yep. And also to note, which is really egregious about this, they were so confident in that this was going to be the definitive edition that if you had the old ones on Steam, you can't get them anymore. They're completely gone. They removed them because they were expecting everyone to buy this one. And yeah, absolute hilarious things mistakes that they made here is all the different collision detection, because you don't have the geometry adaptation. So, I mean, I wish it was this fast to get into the parking lot at the Gaylord, but yeah, basically, so, you know, the meshes for the actual collision aren't properly lined up for anything. Another aspect, which unfortunately I don't have video of, is the, there we go, that's me on the New Jersey Turnpike. Me too, that's how it, yeah. So yeah, and again, that's why I said the seizure warning thing, because like I didn't think that would do that, but this is my favorite one. So he's gonna land, and then the animation's gonna get stuck.
Actually, that can really happen.
Yep. Oh yeah. And another favorite one of mine again is they especially used for shorthand, because they were probably going to try to polish it later, AI technology to updo the textures and the various ways the geometry and the textures land with each other. The issue with that, as you've probably seen, are the memes where it's trying to interpret words for signage that are blurry, that are not. So you'll see an ad for ramen noodles, and it's instead of like, you know, ramen A noodles, it's now like cock gobbler, because the AI, that's what it thought it was the closest thing to match in English. But it's also caused some amazing things to happen with computer, it's not just the vehicles, the models themselves also have numerous glitches, such as the cameras getting stuck and then characters, so you can see from the inside. And yeah. And Saturday night drinking at MAGFest is pretty much this is what we're going to be by the end of the night, where the room is spinning and like weird freaks of nature like that. That's our amazing. This is like, you know, if you are Sigma male, this is how you lift, bro. This is exactly how you lift. Like, if you're doing push-ups and CrossFit, you're not doing it correctly. This guy knows what's up with his demonic glowing red eyes. This is one of my favorite. Yep. I told you they're both there, so you can handle that. So first of all, those fingers, I love the manicure, but and that's not even the worst part. The audio actually goes in fine, even though I removed all the audios for this. It's just like, wow, those fingers. And apparently someone really hated those fingers in the game. You're good. Because this is how the cutscene ends now. And again, it's not just, and I'll just talk over a little bit with more modeling stuff, yeah, and I'm just trying to, yeah. This is my first time this is my first time in Virginia, but this is when I always hear like people talk about horror stories, what the homeless are like in New York. That's why I imagine they think of, even though it's not true.
Okay.
And lastly, it's, yep.
Do we have a DisplayPort tab?
Well, I was gonna, oh shit.
Or VGA?
This one unfortunately doesn't. I was gonna put on stick and then move it in terms of, yeah.
I got you.
Because this one should copy, yep. So, and take your time, you don't have to talk forever if you don't.
Yep.
And lastly, this is such an engine fail with trying to adapt to modern architecture that one of the biggest problems is that, I'm not gonna go into specifics, it's gonna take a while, but the way the weather effects are generated. First of all, they did the modern game design thing where they pretty much removed the draw distance, which is a problem because it's like we've seen with the Silent Hill 2 and 3 collection. The game developers at the time factored in the draw distance when it came to actually angling the scenes. So one thing you're going to notice besides the obvious thing is that the world just ends like we're in the Truman Show, and it's just a stage wall. Like this is the part you weren't supposed to see.
There you go.
But a big big problem, and then after that we'll do all of this. Oh wait, this is the
That's you put it in. It has a copy on it.
Okay. I just realized something about this, but a big thing about this is that the way the weather system renders, the way it does rain and snow and fog, is that it's supposed to be like if I remember correctly, it's supposed to be like they're not using geometric models, but they're not using like particle engine systems either.
I'll just do it from here.
Okay. Yeah, you're not using that. And the problem is that with trying to adapt it with the new sort of iOS Plus engine they were using, that did not go over well.
Okay, where's the Cybercrime folder?
Oh,
No, wait.
Yeah, that's
USB shuttle. There we go. There it is.
Okay. You'll get to see my lovely files for a minute.
All right, so
All right.
I hope
the ODP and PowerPoint.
Yeah.
Either one would work.
I hope it launches. Otherwise, Windows will yell at me. Here we go. These were the slides we're supposed to have. Yay! Right before we get to that, though, I do want to just talk because we are.
And we're only 40 minutes late.
I know. Yay! Hack the planet. We hacked it. We did it, folks. Let me just give me 1 second. Actually, in the meantime, can you talk a little bit about like some of the things that interest you during 2020, 2021 with gaming stuff?
Right. So, a couple of things that I would point out is that while the pandemic was going on, a lot of people were shut inside, and because they didn't have work to go to, and they didn't have, school to be at, they had a lot of free time, and a lot of these people were very skilled in, needless to say, getting access to things that they weren't supposed to. And have you mentioned the stuff that got out about
The GigaLeaks?
Yeah, that stuff.
Yeah, I covered Super Mario 64. We haven't covered Ocarina of Time, though. Yeah.
Okay.
I did a little bit about how they decompiled it.
Well, the decompiles have nothing to do with the GigaLeak. Absolutely nothing.
I'm a smart person.
Yeah, no, I'd like to make that clear. While these people were working on decompiling the games, it was just a rather unfortunate coincidence that somebody had broken into Nintendo and gotten a lot of source code and assets that have never been released. These decompile projects are independent and have been running for a long time. I believe since 2015 for the Super Mario 64 one.
Right.
And basically what happened there is that these people went through each line of assembly code and figured out how the original compilers worked on the Iris dev kit, which is what the N64 used. They were based on a SGI Iris platform running IRIX. And the Indigo was also the hardware they used to compile it and test the programs on, with a custom Ultra 64 developer board attached to it. Now, they figured out how ICC, the IRIX C compiler, worked as far as translating C code into pure assembly functions, and figured out that they could use that as a map, as a reference to decompile from the source, from the compiled code, which is basically assembly, back into the original C code. So they just did that. They reverse engineered every line, figured that how the original C worked, and made sure that the C code that they managed to rewrite for it would compile on a one-to-one basis to the original code, including all the assets and stuff.
Which is, if I understand, one of the reasons why you can run this, and technically I'm pretty sure they could zing you in other ways that like Nintendo shouldn't be able to yell at you, because it's like separate. Yeah. Yeah, it's meant to be a legal project. You still need to have your own copy of the game in order to get the original Which we totally
assets and
do.
other stuff.
Also, the thing of this slide I want to miss and show is the hardware prototypes that also came out in that GigaLeak. This is all public information, by the way, such as the Wii remote design. Sadly, I couldn't find this, even though I found the articles on this. One of the things apparently in that GigaLeak is they actually do have a controller that has, if I remember correctly, that they developed after Wii U, it's a touch screen, but it actually has the buttons embedded in the touch screen. So I understood why Nintendo freaked out when they saw that fake leak of the Wii U 2 controller that looked like that. Because, like, it's funny, that's a legitimate fake.
The NX controller, the weird oval thing.
Yeah, like that's a legitimate fake, but apparently that concept was in the data in that. So no wonder why they freaked out.
Nintendo did have a reference on a patent about that, and the leak looked too much like the patent for it to be, you know.
Just to pick up, because I actually went through like most of the stuff, so we're good.
Okay, cool.
In terms of also leaks, and we will get back to footage in a moment. Also, don't forget about Capcom and Sega. So I'll cover Capcom. I think you can talk a bit about what happened with Sega recently. So Capcom was hit by what's called a Ragnarok ransomware. All you need to know is that they got hit by ransomware, and they actually did what most cybersecurity people tell companies, which is don't pay the ransomware. And apparently Capcom got really overzealous from that. So as the slide says, they fucked around and they found out, because the ransomware actually had balls, and they were like, yep, we're going to keep our promise, and that if you don't pay us, we're just going to leak all the data that was in here, which included multiple engines as well as a lot of release dates for Capcom projects for the next like 8 years.
Yeah, no, oftentimes the response that video game company CEOs give to, if you tell them, yeah, we got attacked by, and our data got attacked by ransomware, the response you get is, well, at ransomware, go chase after it, go get it. I mean, seriously. Anyway.
And you died laughing when we saw a couple of days ago what happened with Sega Europe, which I do want to clarify. They weren't like hacked, like in terms of like black hat group, like what Capcom did. They actually paid what's called a white hat company to hack them to see if there was any security issues.
So they performed a security audit, and
what was their issues?
The audit had found some like grueling mistakes in their architecture, to the point where they conclude that it's almost certain that somebody had access to this stuff before these auditors had found the holes in their system. Now, they had plugged these holes since, but that's kind of a chilling factor when it comes to like Sega and keeping a hold of their trade secrets and stuff, you know?
Yep, and so now we're just going to get into bits that we don't get. We're going to try to put a little bit of time at the end for questions, so just hold on a moment.
And that was reported on as being, well, Sega got a hole blown open in its systems. No, the hole was already there. It got patched, and then they let people know it got found out.
It's like the reverse of Silent Hill 2. There was a hole there. It was there. So the other runner-up, I would say, for the Cyberpunk 2020 of last year is the Sonic Colors. which again, as I mentioned before, you often think, well, this is an old Wii game. Shouldn't they just bring that over and just add updated textures and like make it like in 4K? But one, porting engines over is kind of odd, and there's this particular case about what engine they claim they use but didn't really use. Do you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, what happened was, in order to ease the porting process, they took the original engine code for Sonic Colors on the Wii and transpiled it into a framework that they could then apply to the Godot engine, which is this open source C# based, well, not C#, it's C++ based, but they have a C# layer underneath it, and it has its own scripting engine. Not too much to talk about here, but it's a very advanced engine as far as free and open source software goes. And Sega Team used this as their middleware for getting the engine code on the Wii to talk to modern machines like PC, Switch, PS4, and Xbox One. Now, what wound up happening was this middleware layer wasn't exactly put together properly, and some of the shader effects that really depended on the GX core in the Wii failed to translate over in a proper manner to the Godot shader language, which I believe is HLSL. And as a result, there was there were glitches, there were visual problems, and there were also gameplay and physics problems, again, because the code was being translated under this layer. Because if you didn't know, the Wii and the GameCube are the same architecture, it's just the Wii runs slightly faster, and they're both a big endian PowerPC processor. All modern systems run as little endian mode, which means the order of the bits going from the most to the least significant are backwards on the Wii as opposed to PC, Switch, Xbox, and anything else with an x86 or ARM chipset. Now that caused problems, and as you can see, Sonic really didn't fare too well with that.
Yep.
It could have used some extra time in debugging, but it didn't.
So now we're going to do, because I'm an idiot, we're going to go through some rapid fire ones here. So this will be pretty neat. Most of these were rapid fire anyhow. Something that I feel like everyone's forgot about. Is anyone that plays Fall Guys still in this day and age? Just making sure out there. Yep. I'm not judging you.
5 hands
yes.
out of 300 about. Cool.
What was the contention point for you in terms of this? Was it the fact that you could enter HTML and JavaScript into the names and there was no AI that looked for it, so then you can basically make the CSS fancy of your dreams? Or the fact that shortly after that, when they did an update to Steam, they accidentally put all the source code on there for the game?
When they updated the depot files on Steam and put their assets onto the CDN, normally the source code doesn't go with it, but they put the wrong version of the tree in and forgot to like put a .gitignore in the right place, and all the code just went right through the depot, and they hoped nobody would notice it. People noticed.
Yep. And as someone brought up in the audience, we have our favorite topic for the past 2 months, which is Log4j. There's so many memes on this, and you're probably asking, well, this is because most of it we saw were like major servers and kiosks and stuff. We literally found someone managed to put it on a magstripe card and like block gas stations.
They put the Log4j payload on hotel cards and tapped them on hotel security checkpoints like at the doors and stuff, and wound up getting access from the hotel.
Yep.
We've got one hand in the audience. Yes.
So, fun fact: I work on a Linux distro for a living. People wrote exploits that would basically cause servers to then attach the exploit into neighboring.
Yes. So yes, people had, as this person mentioned, people had written code that would inoculate servers from this exploit, from this vulnerability, by patching Log4j itself on the server it was running. So, but this whole thing with Log4j is that it started from Minecraft. Yeah. Like, it started because some Minecraft mod developers had discovered, Minecraft's version of Log4j has this weird thing where you put JNDI and you can use a JNDI URL. Okay. Well, this means I can pull data and code from other servers into the Minecraft base, and I have control over this because it just happens when I'm being logged to the state. Okay. And then they reported that, and well, it blew out of proportion before it finally got patched. And as we know, Java code bases in enterprise, they tend to stagnate. So it became quite an ordeal.
And this person, what they're doing is they're using Log4j on the server side here to constantly launch the calculator while the person's trying to play in Minecraft Java edition.
Yeah, in the in InfoSec we call that popping a calc.
And real quick, because I was going to go a bit longer than this, but there's even games that people enjoy have had some amazing glitches just due to rushes and odd stuff going on. That's why I brought up Craig here. One of my favorite ones is probably my favorite thing is there's a glitch in the multiplayer where due to the camera rigging system, the camera swerves in such a way that it doesn't know how to render the model, which I feel sad for because there's been like obviously lots of work on like, you know, the textures and rendering of these the awesome skins. And just the animations, like I want to play this game, and unfortunately, someone decided they don't want to join the game anymore. More like the camera angle didn't want to have them join anymore.
Okay, I don't want to be on this planet anymore. Boop.
I mean, that's definitely a sentiment now. We're still in the plague. And just a real quick one here. I'm going to kind of skip around. They've also found hilarious duplication glitches using grenades. And you can do this so much that it really gets out of control.
Oh, wow.
If you come in and your office looks like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's just go for some more rapid fire stuff, and then we'll kind of open up like probably like 3 to 5 minutes for like just questions. And we'll also be hanging out there in the safe there if the Squid Game people don't get us first. There's been a bunch of stuff, particularly with like homebrew stuff and communities. Another one from Modern Vintage Gamer highlighted was that the dump of the SNES Doom engine, which is known as the Reality engine.
Yeah.
Because reality, man.
So I'll make a note about this, that even though there were a lot of illicit hacks that caused a lot of illicit leaks, a lot of game developers who had worked on these original projects and had source code had a sort of change of heart over the pandemic, and because they own the copyright to their code, they are in the legal right, usually, to publish their own work on GitHub. So things like SNES Doom got on the GitHub, not very recently, but quite a while ago. The other ports of Doom for the 3DO, PCFX, and Jaguar, I think, made it on. So, yeah.
And there's been a lot of amazing mods, such as the fact that Resident Evil 8 is literally like 8 lines different overall in terms of the engine itself, not the rendering from Resident Evil 7, which is why when the demo came out, they were instantly able to mod it and do things like put Barney in it and Thomas the Tank Engine.
It's usually a good thing to have reusable code in an engine, because it means you can rapidly prototype and develop your engine.
I love
but it
you.
also means that the bugs and hacks carry over into the new game.
I will kill your family. No. And one last thing that I want to personally shout out, because unfortunately we're going to jump around due to my idiocy, is that...
Wait, what's that last? Never mind. Keep going.
Yeah. Is that... I know that there was an announcement that that there was going to be like Panasonic M2. This is like kind of a weird relation to it, where a lot of the hardware concept from that actually ended up being an arcade unit that Konami had like the rights to manufacture and put out. And it's noted for being, if you thought the Sega Saturn was confusing with its 8 different processors or whatever, M2 has nothing on that. It was literally known as the architecture that was unmameable, but thanks to amazing people refurbishing actual hardware machines, especially from the light gun community, as well as just reverse engineering code. Not only can we now run it mostly fine on MAME, but one of the recent things that happened is that one of the people who was big on this project also just dumped all of the files for each of the different games, such as these games you probably never heard of, Evil Knight, Battle Trist, and stuff like that on there. So the whole project is open, the hardware software is open to see. If you have the hardware, there's video tutorials on how to repair it.
Yeah.
It's been pretty amazing.
M2 is interesting because the system was originally intended for home use as like a sequel to the 3DO. Of course, the 3DO, being canceled as it was, never got a sequel, but the hardware was still developed and Panasonic needed something to do with it.
Also cousins to EA.
Yeah. So Konami was just like, hey, you have that hardware, let's make a arcade machine out of it, and they did.
I'm also not going to, unfortunately, go into this panel, but I also will put in the same way we don't want game developers to cause seizures and for game development to be unionized. rollback netcode's probably going to be the big thing on the back of the box for a while, thanks to the pandemic. Now that we're like, not only online is bigger than ever, but also just because we need to. And what's the ultimate social distancing than losing to a guy from Brazil?
Yeah.
Rollback netcode in its way of blending animations so that you don't have to do like weird lag and stuff to make online connections work will not only help the fighting game community, it's also going to help out a lot of different things. And the weird part is that while industry people made this, they made this as a side project on their own time. There's no company that like made rollback netcode or whatever. You can just completely get it on Source Hub.
Well,
and use
it was originally developed for the fighting game community as a way to. It was a patch that was being applied to. I believe it was one of the Street Fighter games.
Yeah, it's Street Fighter 4.
Yeah,
because of its shitty netcode.
Came from that, and they made it like a legitimate thing to the point where companies are now like, yeah, we actually support this and we have it, and the companies that do usually generally have better netcode than the ones that don't.
So rapid fire thing, and we might be able to take some things here if we're allowed a bit of time. Otherwise, we will definitely talk to you all in the hallway. But we just also want to bring up in terms of I love this panel, in terms of live streaming and other stuff, Twitch also had a major thing where all of Twitch's source code was leaked, as well as so change your passwords if you haven't done that and re-enable 2A.
I think they forced you to. Anyway.
Yeah, they forced you to, but just still as a reminder, you should really do that with most of your online accounts anyhow. But I think the crazy thing that was reported is it also leaked out the salaries of a lot of streamers, and it kind of confirmed, because everyone's like, these hot tub girls are like illegally making all this money, and then all the top stuff was like I'm going to put my blue hair on, like cis, white, boring, like streamers I never watch because they're so boring, to be honest. And then the thing which I'm going to bring this
the
up
advertiser-friendly streamers, in other words.
So we know that Twitch happened, but another big thing that people missed from 2020 is that Microsoft's Mixer also went the way of the dodo, which we were supposed to have originally 3 panelists here. There was another panelist who's a good friend of Mars. He actually lives in our area, called N Commander. He does a lot of amazing retro live streams. He's worked on some amazing projects over the years, and one of them was he was actually one of the people who contract worked at Beam for. So you know how Mixer was like, oh, we have super low latency for like video.
Yeah,
and stuff.
he did that.
He built that himself.
It's called FTL, faster than light, and it's a real nice protocol.
We were supposed to originally bring him here, but obviously due to the pandemic stuff, like he's not sick. It's just he doesn't want to get sick. So we just wanted to shout out to thank you, N Commander, for even though your stuff got shit canned by Microsoft, just like every other thing by Microsoft. And he's still working on crazy things. We just want to shout out.
Have to pay respects.
Yep. And finally, And finally, to end this, everyone's favorite topic, unfortunately, NFT gaming is real, and now it's gotten so bad. It's gotten so yes. We
have a designated NFT spot with a sign. We need to take this over there.
I'm shocked no one has turned that into an NFT. Like they're like that level of bad. Oh God, I gave them ideas. Okay, let's go on.
Let's go on.
Real quick thing. Ubisoft's video about their NFTs were so bad they actually had to take the video down. They're basically like running up to the Star Wars Galactic Cruiser to like people not liking this. And also, in addition to killing chaos, Square Enix has announced that their funnily named Shinra division is also going to be making both blockchain and NFC games. And speaking of NFC, here's my final joke. You want to hear something really funny? The Intellivision Amico. So this is Tommy Tallarico and friends trying to bring the Intellivision Amico back while also being like really scummy about it. And our favorite thing is they combine our 2 favorite terms, which I literally think they did because it rhymed, NFT and near field communication, NFC.
Yeah.
And the crazy part is when they sold the cards first, even though that you can't get the games. And when a person who deals with NFTs scanned them, it went to direct plain text URLs, no passwords and stuff for the actual like NFT on the blockchain for the games.
It's like there's no crypto in this cryptocurrency.
Yep. So unfortunately, we're not going to get to the bonus stuff.
I also like how the Shinra division of Square Enix is doing the cryptocurrency stuff. Like it's like they want to make a profit.
Well, with Nintendo, we had Bowser versus Bowser. Literally, major holders are named Bowser versus Doug Bowser, who's the current head of Nintendo of America.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised if like you get an illegal battle and it's literally like Tanaka Sephiroth at this point. Because we live in that reality. But last thing, I'm honest about this, and then we'll either take Q&A or hang out outside. We just want to shout out that in addition to being a DEF CON group, we're also part of the Electronic Frontier Alliance.
Yep.
If you don't know what that is, they are a subsection of the Electronic Fraternity Foundation that allows local activists and technologists to promote privacy and raise privacy and security concerns.
Or as their new logo says, the Electronic Frontier Foundation, FF.
Yes. And real quick about that, so just be mindful that when you do this con experience, like I'm pretty sure no one's gonna, here's a terrible phrase to say, probably no one's gonna get hacked. I've seen a lot of the behind the stuff team. We were originally gonna have a Ponagachi here and be like, surprise, we got a Ponagachi. It like cutely scans your Wi-Fi stuff. We don't get any data from it. And literally the MAGFest team was like, no.
Yeah, no.
And we saw the equipment, we're like,
we would
yeah.
have pissed off Tech Ops running it. The team didn't have to say anything. I just used my better judgment on this one.
Yeah, yes.
You're welcome.
So,
because it would do deauth attacks on just random MAC addresses in the field, and I didn't feel like disconnecting someone's panel laptop in the middle of.
Would come over and beat us up with the Rob. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. We did not want to become the Log4j of MAGFest.
We would become Gyromite at this point.
So just some quick stuff. If you're actually able to connect to local Wi-Fi here, Tor browser is great because it doesn't interrupt too much stuff, but at the basic level, and you have to like look for this, use a VPN to trust. I couldn't bring up the web browser on here, but if you literally go on to DuckDuckGo, I'll say, and you type in privacy guides, there's an amazing website that will let you know what apps you can put on your phone, what programs to run on there, how you can modify your browser, and you literally follow these simple steps and you're good against like 70 to 80% of the stuff out there, including the stuff at like MAGFest.
If you're already familiar with privacytools.io, this is the successor to that because the old one kind of got into a situation.
So until someone yells at us, I guess for like 2 minutes, does anyone want to ask us hackers questions, whether about this or hacking in general or why my hair's crazy? It's all my fault. Yes, sir, in the back?
Well, first of all, that muscles is like a weekly treat for me, so I'm glad I found another person who watches them.
I can't wait till he does Stadia. I'm waiting for that.
But this actually ties in what you were saying about Cyberpunk. I thought I'd share this fun fact for anyone who may have not seen that video. For the Silent Hill, like, ports they did for the PS3 and Xbox 360, they used an incomplete version of the game because Konami did a Konami and lost it.
Yeah.
Funny thing you mentioned about Konami, the first day of MAGFest, they decided to celebrate Castlevania's 35th anniversary by making Castlevania NFTs.
Oh, Lord. Jeez. Yeah.
Don't give them ideas of trying to make them mate. No. Any more quick questions? We'll
red
take
shirt
like
in the
2
front.
more. Yep.
So as someone who's like a casual person, not really tech guy,
Yeah.
what VPNs do you recommend?
Personally, Mulvad.
Yeah.
That's like the gold standard as far as privacy aware.
It's paid, but it's not expensive.
Yeah.
And they're really good. They also have their own website through Tor. And I would actually say, because I personally use these two, these are like lower level ones, a good mostly free one overall is Proton VPN.
Yeah.
No ads or anything. And then if you want to do like real activist stuff, it's a super basic one. It just redirects you to some random thing in New York. But the folks at Rise Up, who make a lot of like hacker activist stuff, you can download an app on your phone that instantly you just click on it and you're pretty good with that.
And as far as VPNs are concerned, I will say that they are not a panacea. They're not a cure-all.
Yeah.
Like if you're being targeted by like government surveillance, or if you're worried about like having to leak something like super private or secret, I would recommend you get in touch with your local hacker scene and talk to someone who really knows their shit.
Like a
because,
local DEF CON or 2600 group. Or,
yeah,
we're
because
still
they'll
here.
set you up with like a properly secure Tor setup and get you like connected in a way that you're not going to identify yourself if you have to do whistleblowing or something like that.
And also, real quick,
Because VPNs are just good for general security if you're on an unprotected Wi-Fi or
a
something.
thing that we often talk about is that as that we always tell people, hackers, good hackers, treat this pandemic and their bodies like they would their own computers. Like it's like you wouldn't allow this bullcrap on your computer, so why would you do your body? So it's like similar where if we were just wearing masks but we were still like naked rubbing butts on each other and stuff, like we would be a super spreader. But it's the fact that we're wearing masks, we're social distancing, we're washing our hands. That combined makes better security. So again, as he said, just getting a VPN's not alone. You have to do multiple things. The good thing though is, unlike back in the day, you don't have to like code in terminal in order to make a VPN. You can do that, but
it's basic digital hygiene at this point.
Yes. We'll take, I guess, 2 more questions before we get kicked out. Yeah, anyone? Or you guys just stumped? Yes.
One right there.
What
Although GOG's gone down in flames.
Yeah.
Is it just because it seems like we're also just getting a lot less games than we were how effective the problem is?
So the thing about it is that I think we do have a lot of games in the pipeline. The problem is that they're still in the pipeline because, especially in Japan, where working remote is not a concept in their country, that's basically kind of delayed everything. Basically, it was a miracle that Metroid Dread, my favorite game of last year, was near. I was at both Metroid panels. That it's like that was near end of development, so they were able to ship that.
Yeah. And like, personally, I am not a pirate, but I've been watching the de novo cracking scene and like how the cracks have been coming out and how they've reverse engineered the de novo VM. And there is a lot to it, but because there's been more microarchitectural foundational problems in like Intel SGX and things like that, there's been ways to get around like de novo's secure VM stuff in general. And people have been making emulators for debugging de novo, and it makes things a lot easier for people to crack
I almost
that
forgot
stuff.
that there's now hints from a group called Fail Overflow that they're breaking into the PS5, so I wouldn't be surprised if this year we're going to hear more about that, because we're very familiar with
I mean, the PS5 is just a big PS4, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, we even covered in the PS4 is literally just operating system called FreeBSD with like 3 modifications to it. I guess what we'll end instead of questions, I want to quickly ask the audience, what big game this year do you think might become the new Grand Theft Auto Definitive Edition or Cyberpunk 2077?
All of them?
All of them.
Elden Ring.
Ooh, that's an interesting, especially since there was a successful beta for it. That's an interesting cause. We all know to beat up him. Anyone else?
What's that?
What were you saying, sir? That was mine. Yeah. I mean, they have Microsoft money now, but you saw they canned Mixer, so. All right. So sorry that everything was really shoddy. That was entirely my fault. But thank you all for attending this panel.